The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas, critical opinions in Southeast Asia. Hi, this is Arlene and you're listening to Durian ASEAN. At our second segment in our Durian Heat, we have a researcher. Her name is Dr. Sophie Lemière. She's a political anthropologist for Malaysia and Tunisia based in European University Institute. She will be sharing with us a topic that not many Malaysian actually talk about it, but it's an open secret anyway. It's actually related to PEKIDA, the politics of gangsterism. So hi, welcome to the studio.
Hi, thank you. Thanks a lot for having me today.
So Sophie, maybe a bit of introduction about your background and how do you happen to make Malaysia as your research ground?
Well, actually, I did my PhD on Malaysia, and I've been living in Malaysia for quite a long time and coming to Malaysia on very regular basis since 2005. The fact is that most French people don't know much about Malaysia. So
probably the whole world might not know. You're just a small spot.
No, but you are a very interesting one and very rich for research, actually. So, and so I saw here quite kind of a niche, for research. So I was really happy to start my PhD on Malaysian studies. And I did actually my master on Malaysia as well, and at that time, that was in 2006, at that time I was working on civil society, Islamic NGO, and the entire debate around apostasy and Article 11.
Oh, wow.
So that was extremely interesting, and I spent about a year, doing research on the topic. Then I finished my master, and I decided for my PhD to focus on those Islamic NGOs. And on the way, as I was interviewing more and more people, I came across PEKIDA guys. And I discovered that actually they were not totally an Islamic NGO.
Really? but why PEKIDA? Like is it because many Malaysians are talking about it, but actually they still do not know much about it? Or do you feel that there's something interesting about them that is more than just what the newspaper report about them?
Well, actually, it's for outsider. PEKIDA is kind of a common expression or a name that describes a very unidentified entity, When people talk about PEKIDA, they tend to lower their voice a little bit, so it's quite interesting. And we say, oh, no, PEKIDA, no, we can't talk about it. So I was like, well, it's weird because, we talk easily about any Islamic NGO, so what's the difference with those guys? What's the deal, right? So then I start to do some research, and you would find most information you find about PEKIDA on internet, of course, are coming from blogs or, I would not say unreliable sources, but sources that might not be double-checked, right? Or social network, etc. So some people may call it as an NGO, a militia, gangsters, etc. So like, okay, what the deal? So of course I started to meet PEKIDA people, or people who would claim that they are PEKIDA members or that they have a formal or informal affiliation to the NGO, and I start just to do an investigation, but a scientific one, of course. So it took me 5 years. So it was really 5 years of research, anthropological research. So it's in long interview and observation. And then I wrote my PhD about that.
So what was the methodology that you used when you were trying to get information out of them?
So basically, well, as any anthropologist, we have an ethical code so that we follow strictly. It's like when you arrive in a new place and you want to make new friends. You need to build a network. You need to build relationship with people, and those relationships, and especially in this kind of environment, need to be based on trust, right? So that's why it took a long time as well. But then you meet a first one just out of chance. It turned that I needed a car, and I bought a second-hand car.
Aww.
And the guy from whom I bought the car was a PEKIDA member.
Wow.
So it was just out of chance, it was just out of opportunity. And I'm like, okay, well, this is it's my point of entry, And while I did spend a bit of time with that person, we had very interesting discussion. And from there, then, well, you will meet one friend, then another friend, and then, of course, that change area in order to be able to meet other people from other group, to be able to cross-check information, to cross-check perception as well, because as anthropologists, we do work a lot on the perception of people. So it's their own reality. It might not be the reality of everyone, but it's their own, way, opinion, and way of thinking. And then that's it, and it's how you build it, and it's like a puzzle, and you put the piece together to make a coherent story and a good analysis.
So in reality, the PEKIDA people are just like, the folks down the street. Is just the regular Joe, the regular guy.
They're like you.
Oh.
And me. They're like you and me, but in a male version most of the time. I haven't met a lot of female in PEKIDA, and the network is very male-ish. But yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful for the time I did spend with those guys, and it's I keep a very good relationship with most of them, for the reason that we built a real trusty relationship, and they would always remain anonymous. In the same way, I did met a lot of politicians from every side and from every cultural background, and I don't mention name as well unless they make official statement. But a lot of the interview I did were off the record. My ambition here during my PhD and even today is to actually understand a dynamic, not to expose anyone, not to expose any individual, because this is not my job. This is not what I do, and this is not what I want to do. So it's really about understanding a dynamic, and then be able, of course, to put it in theory, because it's what we like. We're academic, right? And then have a new case of study and eventually compare it to other countries, as I do today with Tunisia.
Mm-hmm. So about PEKIDA, the media always paint PEKIDA as this ultra Malay group that keep everything to themselves. There is like a secret society, and sometimes they paint themselves as this mafia group, probably similar to what Hollywood version of mafia would be. But how true is that, or how much is that actually myth?
Well, PEKIDA is a complex network of discrete NGOs created by gangs, for which political activism, political action has become a business. So they're here first to make money. And, well, political services, I would say, has become an option, has become a service they may offer to people in need for political support or for political supporter. So PEKIDA is referred to as Tiga Line, or the 3 line, but everybody would understand Tiga Line here. And it's alluding to actually the color of its official flag. So you may see on the internet and even during demonstration a 3-color flag or 3-colored logo. It reminds of Bob Marley, actually. So it's red, yellow, and green. So it's not really close to Bob Marley, right? But the red, so red, yellow, and green, the use of the 3 color signified the allegiance of the group.
It's not inspired by Jamaican culture or something.
It's not. Well, some would, because actually, if it's very easy. If you Google, if you look at Google and you look for image of PEKIDA, you may find some PEKIDA logo, and on the top of it you will see Bob Marley, smoking a massive joint, right? But it's not actually. I mean, in terms of ideology, it's a little far. I mean, we cannot call PEKIDA people Rastafari, that's for sure. So the red in the logo, symbolize the blood, and the Malay community. The yellow, of course, is a reference to royalty, and the green for Islam. But PEKIDA should not be reduced to a set of color, because the NGO is really an umbrella for a nationwide gangsterized network. So for outsiders, as I explained, PEKIDA has become a kind of a common expression to describe these nebulous things that we may call mafia, right-wing group, or whatever. It's very confusing. So at the end of the day, we don't really know what it is. But indeed, for insiders, for PEKIDA member, the name PEKIDA has become a generic name to describe this intricate network of gangs and NGOs that are completely linked together. So in fact, the name PEKIDA itself and the NGO is the name of one of those numerous NGOs created by this network to offer political support and to legalize parts of their activities, and of course eat the reception of fund or from sponsor.
Anyway, we'll take a short break. When we return, more discussion with Dr. Sophie. The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas, critical opinions in Southeast Asia. Hey, this is Arlene. You're back again with Dr. Sophie Lemière, the political anthropologist for Malaysia and Tunisia. She shared with us earlier about PEKIDA, and as part of her thesis, in fact. So now you're talking about it again to the Malaysian public. So about PEKIDA, what makes it unique, or what makes it apart from, different from other right-wing group in Malaysia?
So, well, when we refer to right-wing group in Malaysia, we of course think about Perkasa, and even if we may not always want to talk about Perkasa again and again, I think we need to mention it here. Perkasa is the very official NGO that of course support the most right-wing element of UMNO politics. But the difference with PEKIDA is that PEKIDA is actually as a different agenda. PEKIDA is not much about ideology. They might use a rhetoric and a discourse for the sake of recruitment, for example, but their aim is business. Their aim is to make money. So they are a paid mob. Their muscle, their numbers, and they are the guy you call, you, me, or any politician who may need. They're the guy you call when you need people around. So when you need people during your political campaign, when you need people during demonstration, and when you need protectors, supporters, everything. So it's very different in that sense, because those guys are not really promoting any ideology. They might just promote the ideologies they've been paid to promote.
So I guess if I want to put it in a business sense, what they are selling is actually service.
They're selling service.
They're selling service.
Yeah, they're a service provider.
Sounds like internet service provider.
It's just that, and they're good at it, and they do their job really well.
And there's a high demand in politics for this kind of services, I would presume.
Well, there is, and from both sides. So I mean, the research that I've been doing has shown that most of the groups that I met are actually supporting UMNO politicians, but of course, I mean, they are groups as well supporting the other side. So it's not only a UMNO thing. UMNO is using really, really well, of course, and there is more business to be done with UMNO than with the opposition, for the reason we know. And there is this tradition of, patronage and business politics in UMNO that is a little less present in the opposition. But, maybe the day the opposition takes power, if that happens one day, they will use the same group. And actually, the research that have been led outside of Malaysia, in Indonesia, for example, we call this phenomenon preman, or jago, the free man. Or the research that I'm doing in Tunisia shows that any kind of party, being the ruling party or in opposition, being a leftist, being a right party or religious party or not, may have the use of this kind of group. So it's not at all only a local phenomena. It's not due to the ideology of UMNO per se, but it's just a need that may be created, and especially in the context of transition, that political transition that occur in Malaysia today, the party needs it even more, and it's as well a way to subcontract a form of political violence without being seen as committing this kind of political violence.
But why only recently? Because as far as I know, maybe I'm too young, pre-2008, it seems like groups like PEKIDA has never taken a center stage like what we are seeing right now.
So, well, you're completely right. Actually, those groups have been around for a really long time. Those undefined group of people being involved from time to time in politics have been around for a long time. During the communist insurgency in Malaysia, they were a similar group, and there are a few historical events. Why are we seeing them since 2008? And that's a very good question. since 2008, there've been a lot of NGO have been mushrooming, and actually it's not exactly since 2008. It's a little bit before, and I think the end of the Mahathir era did offer a new space for NGOs, and NGOs have really become, this gauge for good governance. So it's like, oh yeah, let's do a lot of NGOs, and Malaysia looked like this amazing democracy that it is actually not. So it is very easy to register an NGO in Malaysia as long as you don't oppose the government.
So sorry to backtrack to Mahathir's time. So during Mahathir's time, groups like PEKIDA, were they providing their service to the government?
Well, it's a good question. I think that Mahathir government did not need it at the time, because if there were any need for... There were no need for political violence. There were no need for massive demonstration, because anywhere they were not allowed.
So there was a different kind of reality during Mahathir's time.
There were no space for this kind of group.
Everything is centralized to the Prime Minister office.
Exactly.
Even when it comes to trying to create certain kind of fear among society.
Exactly. So I think those groups were existing and have always been existing in Malaysia, but they were used differently than today. So today they are just, they look like NGOs and they hide behind NGOs, right? But during Mahathir time, they may have been used just in another way. But, when you see that, sparkle of violence exploding in some areas, and I'm referring here to a lot of different events that Malaysia and Malaysians have been through, you may wonder, where this group are coming in the picture, and if they do. And I do believe they do.
So historically, they have been here since the 1970s, maybe in a different kind of form, maybe not in the word called PEKIDA. In today's Malaysia, what is their actual role exactly?
Well, to come back on the history, you mentioned the 1970s, and actually if we look at the history of PEKIDA and the first mention of PEKIDA in the press, it's dated back from 1978, and actually the first mention of the name PEKIDA can be found in the Asian Almanac. You can go to NUS Library in Singapore, you will find it. It's open, and the original organization was actually Tentara Sabilula, or the Holy Army, and it was a religious criminal organization that was dissolved in 1978. Then the members reformed two separate organizations. One was called PAS, so Persatuan Angkatan Sabilullah, so it's very close to PAS, we agree, but it's not. It's a completely different organization. And another organization was called PEKIDA. So a decade later, the government authorities accused PAS of being, of course, a terrorist organization linked to PAS, the Parti Islam se Malaysia. And the organization was dissolved by the authorities. But PEKIDA, the other branch, continued to develop its influence and outside the side of the media and the authorities, and was never banned. So it has been around for a long time.
But in this current time, is the role the same as the past? Because you see, last time it was more towards religion, it was somehow a terrorist group. But in today's PEKIDA, is the focus more towards, for example, more towards providing manpower to the government if they need more people on the ground?
So basically, we have to make a distinction between the NGO, PEKIDA, who is officially registered, and I do believe has some dawah, activities and religious activities, and what's behind. So my research focused on what's behind. So of course I'm not saying that every PEKIDA member, PEKIDA the official NGO, are gangsters, but what I'm saying is that a lot of people who claim to be linked to PEKIDA in a way or another are actually engaged and involved in both criminal activities and political action in exchange for money or interest or advantages. Okay, so what's your question again?
My question is, what is PEKIDA's role in today's Malaysia?
So basically, it's as I explained, it's mostly to provide services. So what kind of services they may provide? During a political campaign, you need people to put poster up, and to take off poster of the opposition, for example. So it's one of the things that they may do. You need people to create mess a mess, just to create a mess, to create event, to maintain a level of fear. So it's what they may be used for. So that's during political campaign. But then, the main use of PEKIDA when it comes to the ruling party is to maintain a climate of fear. Okay, we have, in Malaysia, the fear of a new May 69, right? A new May 13. And the existence of those groups who are responsible for violence during demonstration help justifying the use of authoritarian laws in Malaysia and the maintenance of these laws. So basically, when we look at the so-called crackdown that was made in Malaysia in August 2013, when suddenly, the Minister of Interior and the IGP decided to organize this massive operation of contact against gang, it was just a very interesting political maneuver, for they to win points at that time, and they had claimed that they arrest 4,000 people, that among all the gangs, and they mentioned Tigala in 08, 36 as well, and 77, that of course there were no Malay members in those gangs, and of course criminal activities in Malaysia were only due to Chinese and Indian population. So here you can, of course, read, the ideological, the extreme side of UMNO ideology, because thanks God there is still some liberal and very centrist people in UMNO. UMNO is not, the evil that some people may think, but so this kind of political maneuver, like a big crackdown of gangs on actually a fear that you create and that you promote may be again used as a coercive tool, as a tool to justify authoritarian laws and to promote your own self in politics.
Mm-hmm. So is PEKIDA ideology anything based on the ideology of Malay supremacists, but or they are in fact actually an opportunities group that are providing services because of certain social economic reasons?
So basically, it's a group providing political services for economical reason, as we mentioned and as we understand now. It's a gang who needs money. Money is one of the main conditions of the survival of the gang.
So nothing to do with ideology?
Nothing to do with ideology. And the ideology they promote is the one they promote because they're paid to do so. So I like saying that if tomorrow there is a massive feminist, powerful party being created in Malaysia, they might hire a mob as well and pay PEKIDA guys to spread this strong feminist agenda, and they will do so. It's a job. It's what they do for a living. So they might not be very credible as feminists, right? But,
unfortunately.
But why not? If Sister in Islam tomorrow is creating a party, maybe they will hire PEKIDA guys.
They might even change their outlook.
Exactly, definitely.
To be more feminine.
They will change, the red in the flag into pinkish, something like that. Well, then they might look like Juanita UMNO, which is a problem as well. But anyway, so they might even recruit more women in their group. And they might recruit more women, which is, it's what I told them. I offered them to open a woman branch, in PEKIDA, or maybe to do the Parisian chapter of PEKIDA, because I was very sorry to not meet so many women. But I did meet a few, and there are a few female members.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, there are a few female members, but most of the time they are the partner of other PEKIDA members. And it's mostly because, we're not surprised when we know that gangsterized groups are more, male-based.
But why PEKIDA is so attractive to Malays in general? Because I would assume non-Malays would shy away from PEKIDA.
Well, actually, you would be surprised. So we're talking about the gang and behind PEKIDA and all those satellites, right? So we're talking about 77, 36, etc. So they attract a lot of Malay people, but actually you would be surprised to see that there are a lot of Chinese and Indian members in PEKIDA. So they might not show up during right-wing Ketuanan Melayu so-called demonstration, but they are there because they're there for business reason. So actually, all those gangs are the real One Malaysia. No, really, it's multicultural, it's multi-religious, it's multilingual, and it's very interesting to see that the brothers, as they call themselves, would go for demo, Kitwanan Malayu, yeah, hey ho. But at the same time, they have Indian in the group, and they don't have any problem with that. So when it comes to politics and to political action, they would, of course, go side by side with ultra Malay discourse, because it's what they're paid to do, and for the youngest, it's what they are as well trained to think, right? There is a big influence from their leader in that. But then when they come back to the group, the Indian chap is still a brother. So there's no problem here.
So I guess because the ideology is business-centric, anything can happen, I would say.
I would say anything can happen, pretty much. So it's a mob group. It can be used for a lot of different purposes.
Yeah, let's set up a feminist group for them. Let's take a short break. When we return, we will discuss more about this and make a comparison with other groups, similar groups within Southeast Asia that has their own version of PEKIDA. The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas, critical opinions in Southeast Asia. Hey, this is Arlene. We are back again with Dr. Sophie Lemière. She's the political anthropologist studying PEKIDA, the gangster group in Malaysia that is influencing politics in Malaysia like never before. We know more about PEKIDA now, especially what you have done in your thesis research. But is there any similar group in Southeast Asia that employs gangsterism in politics?
So there is actually a phenomenon that is completely known in Indonesia. We call them preman or freeman. It's actually derived from the Dutch expression vrijman, so the free man. We call them jago as well. So those people are gangsters, and they might sell their services from time to time to political parties as well. Actually, my colleague Ian Wilson from Murdoch University, I've been doing an amazing work on them. And you may be his friend on Facebook. Then you're going to see pictures, and so it's really a great work.
Murdoch University from Australia?
Murdoch University in Australia, exactly. So the use of gangster or gangsterized groups in politics in Indonesia is really well known, and in a way perfectly accepted. So it's very interesting to see that in Malaysia nobody has ever talked about it before. So in a way, I'm not going to minimize my work here, but I just look at what was going on in Indonesia, and I was like, well, why not in Malaysia? Why should it be different? And the fact that actually a lot of those kind of militant or activists, right? Because militancy does not cover only armed or violent group. Militancy, the origin of the word, just is to be engaged in politics, right? So those kind of militant who are collaborating with political parties on a very opportunistic basis, it's a phenomenon that exists in a lot of other countries, but it might just take a different shape, because this kind of group are very flexible and they have a very strong adaptability. So they do exist in Tunisia, and that's what I'm looking at now, but they do exist in France as well. So it's not only in certain type of country that it exists, but everywhere, and it's quite interesting to look at.
My question, why it exists in the first place? Because does it exist in certain countries that provide a certain kind of political space for them to exist, or does it exist in almost every form of democracy?
I think it exists in any form of regime, and they might take a different, they might just take a conjectural shape, the shape of the time, just what's most convenient. So in Africa, for example, we see a lot of very violent militia. We call them militia most of the time, which implies a very high level of violence, and those people are completely unleash, elements and very dangerous, who commit murder, crime, rape, etc. But of course, Malaysia is not that case. Malaysia is a grown-up country, and with a lot of potential. And today, Malaysia, the regime love to call itself a democracy, but I would say that Malaysia is more of an illusory democracy. But there is a space, called civil society that actually allows this kind of group. and they took the shape of NGO today, just to be able to participate publicly in the debate, where they can show publicly and officially their support to the ruling party. So in another country, in another time, or in another a cultural setting or political setting, they might just take another shape, as in Tunisia.
I have one interesting question. I'm curious because could PEKIDA be used as a tool for political maneuvering by some interest party within UMNO to destabilize Najib administration instead of merely as a factor towards non-Malay communities? Because even within UMNO, there's a lot of faction. Could it be used by certain faction that is against Najib's administration to somehow delegitimize his ruling, rather than as being used as a tool for fear towards those who might not gel well with the idea of ultra-Malay ideology?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and you're completely right. It's very important when we look at UMNO to understand that UMNO is not one coherent block. I mean, of course, the ideology of the party is coherent, and from outside it looks very solid, and it is a very solid party, but there are a lot of party faction, and this kind of group would answer to the need of certain individuals. They don't answer to UMNO at the whole. So those people, when PEKIDA or this kind of gangsterized group are seen as UMNO militia, it's not true, because they are the mob of some people who want to use it, and not all politicians want to deal with this kind of person. Other politicians may want to, do politics in another way with other strategy. So yes, I mean, definitely, if tomorrow there is a very strong candidate who wants to face Najib and use other means, of course they can use the mob, but it's exactly the same for the opposition. If tomorrow, during a political campaign, in a local, in a more on a local, point of view, in a small town or in a constituency, if they need, to have more power, then they may just hire, PEKIDA people, and that happened actually during the last election. I've seen PEKIDA people working for the opposition as well.
Yeah. Just a side question: is it expensive to get PEKIDA's service?
Well, I think everything is negotiable. We're in Asia, so if you're good at bargaining, then you should be fine.
Are they demanding that, we only do this for this amount?
Well, yeah, there is, depending on the group and depending on the leader, there are certain price, but it can be money, but it can be services as well, or it can be a very some lenience towards the group, and the objective of the group is to be able to remain in this gray zone, where the laws does not really apply. So that's one of the reasons why as well most of the group would support UMNO people, because they're in charge. So it's a little easier to ease, it's a little easier to then continue their activities in the shadows while they're supporting some UMNO politicians, because, it might just be a little easier, and some may close an eye on their activities.
Sounds like in Lord of the Rings, the group of orcs that they put allegiance on Mordor just because, they can gain something out of it. That's my
it is actually, but it sounds a lot like, it sounds a bit cliche, right? This entire research looks a bit like a cliche, the cliche of the mafia in Italy, the yakuza in Japan, the triad in China. But it's not a cliche, it's reality. Interesting thing is that we do have a lot of stereotype and image and fantasy about all these groups, and it's actually what I'm trying to do with my work. It's to go beyond the fantasy and to see, okay, what the real deal here, So interestingly as well is that a lot of the guys that I interview are actually very inspired by those groups, and they call themselves gangsters, but that's the younger people. The older might tell me, I'm a mafia. And so then it's very interesting, because you see the entire influence of the pop culture as well. And actually I'm working on at the moment I'm on the side I'm working on an article about the pop culture in PEKIDA and how they've been influenced, by the entire yakuza and triad stereotypes. So some of them might even get tattoo. And I mean, we know that a lot of Malay people don't want to get tattoo for religious reason, but they might have a dragon or yin and yang, etc. So it's very interesting. You know, there is a whole culture here, and it's very interesting.
We'll take another short break. When we return, we will talk about how can we solve this problem, or is it even solvable in a way?
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas, critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene. We are back again with Dr. Sophie. So, Dr. Sophie, the way forward for this problem with PEKIDA, maybe not really a problem, but I guess the problem of gangsterism in politics, because you want, I mean, as citizen of any country, you want to ensure that the politics are transparent, clean, or based on democratic values, but in reality might not be the case. But how can we address the problem, like perhaps more awareness of the reality on the ground in terms of politics?
Well, I think if you want clean politics, you have to move to Denmark. Because, you know, even being a French citizen, I can tell that, you know, in my own country, politics are far from being clean. So I think it's an unsolvable problem. When it comes to gangsterism in politics, then, well, there are a few things. First, you know, we often see the state as being the upholder of the law, right? But we have to understand that some government might not find any interest in upholding the law in every zone, and this is the first problem. So that's one of the things. If the law was properly implemented and respected, then of course there would be less gangsterism, you know. But then when you see that they are, you know, crackdown being, you know, organized, you know, for political purposes, then you understand that maybe there are still some gray zone remaining in Malaysia. But then when it comes to connivance militant, or those militants who collaborate on an opportunist basis with political parties, you can see that they operate in a lot of different countries, in a lot of different regimes, which are much more transparent, or seen and understood as being much more transparent. So I think that it's just a structural phenomenon. Politics go hand in hand. Political parties go hand in hand with this kind of support group, whether it's their lobby, their pressure group, their NGOs, or the gangsters. It's part of politics. It's really a part of the game. Then it's just about the shape they're taking, and they will just take a timely shape, and the shape that it's just the more effective in the political setting they are. So, but then again, when it comes to Malaysia, if we want to avoid maybe the spreading of gangsterism or the influence of gangs on youth and youngster, you know, even in high school, etc., well, I guess education is one of the main key, you know, for a lot of things actually, but developing a critical mind might help a lot. And then as well, you know, this discourse, this pro-Malay discourse that is very often sold to the youngster to, you know, in exchange for their membership in PEKIDA or in the gang affiliated to the organization or its satellites. Very often, you know, they would tell me that they joined PEKIDA because they want to defend the Malay. And there is a misunderstanding here, because of course it's not a way to defend your community, and it's not about.
But it's the only way that they can do something to address socio-economic problems within their society.
Well,
right?
it's not. Of course, it's not, because there are a lot of only ways in Malaysia to address economic problems. And actually, I think that the problem is not anymore about addressing the Malay problem, but addressing the Malaysian problem, and a lot of people from different cultural backgrounds in Malaysia are facing economic problems, you know, and it's the same thing in France. So I think the problem is that we have to go beyond this kind of politics, and unfortunately they are still given a great deal of importance, and I think it's a complete outdated debate, and it's just a manipulation. It's just a political manipulation, you know.
So are you saying that the higher inequality Malaysia is facing right now, the more suffering, you know, majority Malay in terms of their socio-economic condition, the more PEKIDA seem to be more attractive to them? Would that be the case?
Well, I think any right-wing group is attractive to people who are in economic despair, you know. But when you look at, you know, Indian population living in plantation, I mean, those people are not really at ease. They're not very comfortable, and it's not the reason why they would join any right-wing group or any gang to commit, a violent crime. So it's not because you are living in poor economical conditions that you feel the need to join this kind of group. But it's true that this right-wing discourse might be appealing to some of those people. So I think it's just a question, of course, to try to even the economic disparities, but again, not on a racist agenda, but really to look at people's revenue and on economical pragmatism more than any kind of extremist discourse.
So are you saying that education is one thing, being more aware of Malaysia as a whole, but another thing is, which is the bigger part, I mean the elephant in the room, which is our economy. Malaysian economy has not been doing well, especially in recent times. So and a lot of Malaysians are complaining about the cost of living and how the government is not really putting a lot of effort in addressing issues related to socio-economy. So if the government actually address the socio-economic condition of society, which unfortunately majority of them are Malays, it will somehow reduce the relevance of PEKIDA. Would that be the case?
I would assume so. Well, gangs and criminal groups exist in every country despite any, economic condition, but Malaysia is doing well. The problem is the redistribution of wealth. I mean, we know that. So that's I think corruption is actually one of the key problems, and then of course addressing social policies like the welfare system, a good health system as well. It's very important, and it's among the problem that people are facing here. So yeah, I mean, you're completely right. The economic play a major role in that. But again, there will always be gangs and groups who want to make money, and they're part of the business environment, and they're there. And it's I would even say it's healthy. It's healthy to have criminal group. It's how it works in every country. Fine, but then you arrest them. And that's the problem.
That's another problem about the law.
It's another problem about the law. That's what I was
But
telling
if you want to have like an immediate solution to address this, that Malaysians can be more aware of, what would that be?
An immediate solution. Vote. That's an immediate solution. Vote. Go to vote. That's very important. And read the press, and just be critical. Don't take everything for granted, and be critical. Ask questions. That's the main thing. Everything is on the internet. It's very easy.
And don't read tabloids.
And don't read tabloids.
Thank you very much for
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.